Let's discuss the structure of the heart. Now, before we do that, I want to ask you this. Do you know what the size of the heart of an adult human is? It's actually equivalent to the size of a fist. So tiny, yet so vital. Now, when you talk about the structure of the heart, I'm going to group it into such the external structure and the internal structure of the heart. So let's get into it. Now, what is the heart? The heart is a muscular organ. This is located in the chest cavity in between the lungs. So, what is the purpose of the heart? It pumps blood throughout the whole body 24/7. That essentially means that your heart works throughout to pump blood in your body until you die. Now, when you talk about the very external part of the heart, we have the pericardium. So, the pericardium is a tough, translucent membrane that surrounds the heart. It has two functions. Function number one is that it protects the heart against overdilation. Okay, what do I mean by this? So, you find that when the heart pumps blood, it undergoes rhythmic contractions and expansions. However, if the heart was to dilate excessively, expand too much, it could lead to issues such as irregular heartbeats or even damage to the heart muscles. So the pericardium helps to prevent overdilation of the heart by providing support and limiting the expansion of the heart chambers. This of course is very important because it maintains the size and shape of the heart. The other function of the pericardial membrane is that it also secretes a fluid which is known as the pericardial fluid. Now, the pericardial fluid itself has two functions. Function number one is that it lubricates the heart as it moves. So it reduces friction during the contraction and relaxation of the heart. It also acts as a shock absorber. So when we use the term shock absorber in biology, we simply means that it absorbs any external forces or shock to the heart, therefore reducing injury to the delicate parts of the heart. Now, the outer part of the pericardium membrane is covered by a layer of fat. This layer acts as a shock absorber. Now, let me take you back to Form 1. When you were discussing the functions of lipids, one of those functions is that lipids tend to be stored around major delicate organs in our body, such as the kidney, the heart, the eyes, etc. And the reason for this is that they act as a shock absorber. They minimize mechanical damage to that part of the body. And that is the reason for this. Now, the heart itself is made up of a special type of muscles called the cardiac muscles. Now, whenever you see the term cardiac muscles, know that it's referring to the specialized muscles found in the heart. Now, these muscles are composed of a network of fibers. They have two unique characteristics that are not found in any other muscle in our body. Number one is that they can contract and relax rhythmically without fatigue. Now, when these muscles stop their contractions, death soon follows. If I may ask, how long do you think a person will last if their heart was to stop beating? Hours? A few minutes? Mere seconds? It's actually a combination of the three. So you find that if your heart stops beating, 20 seconds later, some of your brain cells start dying due to the lack of oxygen. Remember, when the heart pumps blood, it's essentially transporting the oxygen present within the blood to the different tissues of the body. So 20 seconds after that, you have brain cells dying. 5 minutes after that, you can have irreversible brain damage, lasting brain damage that you cannot recover from. Now, after that, from minutes to a few hours, your organs will shut down and you will die. Now, another unique characteristic of the heart is that it's myogenic. Myogenic simply means that the contractions of the muscles, the cardiac muscles, are not actually controlled by the nervous system. Now, when we have muscles in our body, all the movements in our body are controlled by the nervous system with the exception of the cardiac muscles. So what do we mean by the nervous system? The nervous system is a system that consists of the brain, spinal cord, and a network of nerves throughout our body. Now, these control all the muscles in our body except for the cardiac muscles. So the contractions of the cardiac muscles actually arise from the heart itself and are not initiated by the nervous system. How cool is this? Now, the heart muscles are connected to two main blood vessels. We have the coronary artery and the coronary vein. So the coronary artery supplies blood that is rich in oxygen and nutrients to the heart tissues. The coronary vein, on the other hand, transports blood containing waste and carbon dioxide out of the heart and into the vena cava, of course, for removal. Now, the heart itself is also connected to 4 main blood vessels, 2 veins and 2 arteries. So we have the vena cava and we also have the pulmonary vein. These are the veins. We also have the pulmonary artery and the aorta. Now, the vena cava transports blood from the body to the heart. The aorta transports blood from the heart to the rest of the body. The pulmonary artery transports blood from the heart to the lungs. Pulmonary vein, on the other hand, transports blood from the lungs to the heart. Okay, let's get into the internal structure of the heart. So the heart is divided into 4 chambers. The upper chambers are known as the atria. The lower chambers are known as the ventricles. Now, the purpose of the atria is to receive blood. The purpose of the ventricles is to pump blood out of the heart. Now, I want you to look at the atria and the ventricles. You'll notice 2 main differences. One is that the atria tend to be smaller than the ventricles. And number 2 is that the atria have muscular walls that are also thinner than the ventricles. Now, the reason for this is because ventricles are the ones that pump blood out of the heart. So they need to generate a lot of pressure. And the thick muscular walls ensure that they can do so. Now, another thing is this. Look at the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Compare the two. What are you noticing? So you'll notice that the left ventricle has a thicker muscular wall compared to the right ventricle. And the reason for this is because the left ventricle pumps blood out of the heart to the rest of the body. Now, as you can imagine, this is quite a long distance. The right ventricle, on the other hand, pumps blood from the heart just to the lungs. So this is a shorter distance. And that is the reason why the wall of the left ventricle is thicker, so that it can generate more pressure to pump blood a longer distance, which is to the rest of the body. Now, there's another structure. This is known as the septum. So the septum is a thick muscular wall that separates the right side of the heart from the left side. Now, you'll find that the right side of the heart receives deoxygenated blood, while the left side of the heart receives oxygenated blood. Okay, what do I mean by these 2 terms? When we talk about oxygenated blood, this is blood that is rich in oxygen. It has a high concentration of oxygen. Deoxygenated blood, on the other hand, has a lower concentration of oxygen. So in order to prevent the mixing of oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood, we have the septum. Moving on to the next structure, and that is the valves. So when we talk about valves, valves are muscular structures that are found within the heart. They ensure that blood flows in one direction only. So essentially, they prevent the backflow of blood. Now, we have 2 sets of valves. We have the atrioventricular valves, also referred to as cuspid valves. We also have the semilunar valves. Now, these 2 valves are found in different locations. Let's start with the cuspid valves. So the cuspid valves are found between the atria and the ventricle. So we have 2 types of cuspid valves. We have the bicuspid valve and the tricuspid valve. The bicuspid valve is found between the left ventricle and the left auricle. The tricuspid valve, on the other hand, is found between the right auricle and the right ventricle. Now, the function of these valves is that they prevent the blood from flowing back into the atria when the ventricles contract. Okay, let's pause there. When I introduce the atria, I introduce them as the receiving chambers. Blood flows into the atria and then into the ventricles. Now, once the atria are filled with blood, these cuspid valves open up to allow the blood to flow from the atria into the ventricles. Once the blood has flown into the ventricles, the cuspid valves then close up. Now, why are they closing up? The reason why they close up is so as to prevent blood from flowing back into the atria when the ventricles contract. So when the ventricles pump blood out of the heart, they do so by contracting. So they contract to generate the pressure to force the blood out of the ventricles into the arteries. But when they do so, there is a possibility that the blood could flow back into the auricles. And this is where the cuspid valves come in. When they close up, they remove this possibility. Blood cannot flow back into the auricles, but only in one direction. Now, these valves are supported by tendons. So tendons are simply structures that are made up of tough connective tissue. They are attached to the wall of the ventricles on each side of the heart. So the tendons prevent the cuspid valves from turning inside out when under pressure. Now the other set of valves are the semilunar valves. So the semilunar valves are located at the base of the two arteries, the pulmonary artery and the aorta. So just recapping, the auricles receive blood, pass it on to the ventricles. The ventricles have to then pass the blood to the arteries. Now when they do so, they contract to generate the pressure that will force the blood from the ventricles to the arteries. Now, in order to prevent the blood from flowing back into the ventricles, you have the semilunar valves closing up. So when they close up, essentially, they ensure that blood does not flow back from the arteries into the ventricles. So I repeat, we have the cuspid valves and we have the semilunar valves. Cuspid valves prevent the backflow of blood into the auricles when the ventricles contract. Semilunar valves prevent the backflow of blood into the ventricles when the ventricles relax. Now, our last bit has to do with the heartbeat. So when you talk about the heartbeat, this essentially is the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the heart. Now, these contractions originate from the heart itself. Actually, from a region of the heart that is known as the pacemaker or the sinoatrial node. Now, this is a small area of specialized cardiac fibers that is located on the right atrium. So the pacemaker sends out a wave of contractions to the atria, the upper two chambers. These then spread towards the septum, which is the muscular wall separating the right and left side of the heart, and into the atrioventricular node. Now, the atrioventricular node is a group of cells that is found on the septum. So the atrioventricular node is a group of cells that is found on the septum. So what they do is they conduct the wave of contractions to the Purkinje tissue. The Purkinje tissue is found on the walls of the ventricles. It then conducts the impulses from the atrioventricular node to all parts of the ventricles to ensure that the heart muscles contract uniformly. So let's start. We are starting at the sinoatrial node, also known as the pacemaker. We then move to the atrium and then to the atrioventricular node that is found on the septum. From there, it moves to the Purkinje tissue, which is then spread out throughout the heart. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the amazing structure of the heart.